the 8-year-old crown prince skipped class to climb a mountain. Unexpectedly, he lost his footing and fell from a fake mountain. This scene happened to be witnessed by a newly favored concubine. Even though she knew the prince was the queen's child and their rival, she rushed to catch him the moment she saw him fall. But sadly, she was a step too late. The prince crashed heavily onto the ground. When the concubine flipped him over, his face was covered in blood. The palace maid pointed out that the prince was the emperor's only heir, and that nothing must happen to him. The concubine immediately picked up the prince, carrying him to the carriage and rushing to the royal hospital. But on the way, they ran into the queen. The queen, having given birth to the first heir, rightfully made her child the crown prince, and rose from the harem to become the most powerful woman in the kingdom. What she couldn't stand the most was the recently favored concubine. So when she saw the concubine's carriage speeding toward her, she didn't even greet her, and assumed the concubine was in a rush to cover up something. Thinking her carriage must be hiding a man with whom she was secretly having an affair, the queen immediately ordered to stop the concubine's carriage. The concubine's maid was in a panic. Everyone knew the queen was ruthless in the palace, and crossing her was a huge problem. The concubine's second maid assured her that the queen wouldn't make things difficult for her. After all, the child in the carriage was the prince. She handed the prince to a nearby maid, and got out of the carriage to explain the situation to the queen. But instead of understanding, the queen angrily scolded her. The concubine explained that the prince was injured and needed immediate treatment, and asked the queen to let them pass. The queen, however, didn't listen, and began acting arrogant, stating that her status and position were higher than the concubine's. Since they were on a narrow road, the concubine should give way. The concubine looked back at her carriage, saying the vehicle was too big to turn around in such a narrow alley. But the queen ignored her and fiddled with her bracelet. At this point, the concubine was in a state of panic, claiming that the prince's life was in danger. She pleaded with the queen to step aside again. The queen mocked her, asking when she became so kind-hearted, and wondered if she was willing to let her pass today. Suddenly, the maid inside the carriage screamed in panic. The prince had lost too much blood, and his breathing was growing weaker. Helpless, the concubine finally revealed the truth, that the prince had fallen while playing. But the queen insisted that the concubine was lying. She had just been with the prince and he should be studying seriously. When the queen remained adamant, the concubine suggested she look at the prince's injuries for herself, but the queen still refused to believe her. Instead, she tried to humiliate the concubine, ordering her to kneel before her if she wanted to pass. Realizing that the prince's life was at risk, the concubine reluctantly knelt down. But unexpectedly, the queen did not honor her promise, and instead demanded that the concubine kowtow 20 times. At that moment, the concubine realized the queen was toying with her. She wasn't going to let them pass at all. Angered, she stood up to criticize the queen, and said she would report everything to the emperor. But the queen ordered the palace maid to slap her. The maid by the prince's side saw this and rushed out of the carriage, to explain to the queen, only to be treated as a traitor. The queen believed she was colluding with the concubine to deceive her, and immediately ordered to break the maid's legs. As if that wasn't enough, the queen even prepared to shoot arrows at the people in the carriage.